Three ungrateful children made a heartless choice. They decided to abandon their aging parents. For eternity, Lucia and Ricardo were left stranded on a deserted, shadowy road under the scorching sun with no one to turn to for help. One of them coldly declared they could no longer provide care before climbing into a sleek black Mercedes and vanishing down the highway.
It's impossible.
What they didn't realize was that they were distancing themselves from a secret fortune
at the office
worth
is
20
going to
million
affect a
rees.
lot of people.
I hope they consider the impact on the older
Lucia woke
employees
with a
first.
familiar heaviness pressing against her
How can you ask
chest.
me to just walk away from everything
This
we
wasn't
built here?
physical
Sometimes
pain.
walking away is the only option left.
After
It
70
has to
years
be
of
this
living,
way.
she knew the difference well. This was the kind of ache that reaches deep into your soul, the type of hurt you
We've
feel
been discussing a solution.
when you know you're unwelcome in what should be your home.
This might better for everyone.
The house was silent, but it wasn't a peaceful silence. It was thick with tension and words that would never be spoken. Ricardo still slept beside her, his breathing slow and labored as always due to his age and the long, standing heart condition he carried. She gazed at him quietly, studying the deep lines etched across his face, marks of a life filled with hard work, sleepless nights caring for their children, and the courage to smile through every hardship. "How did we end up here, my love?" she whispered softly while stroking his silver hair. Slowly, she rose from bed. Every step was a battle against the pain in her joints. She went to the kitchen to prepare breakfast as she always did, even knowing she'd face only complaints and disapproval. Sylvia emerged from her room still in her robe, her expression cold. "Why are you frying so many eggs again? Do you think we're wealthy?" Lucia's chest tightened once more. "It's only 3 eggs for 4 people. How is that wasteful?" "I just thought you'd want to eat before work," she said quietly, forcing herself to stay calm. Sylvia shot back that she eats out because it's cheaper than feeding them every day. Without warning, she slammed a stack of hospital bills onto the table. "Look at this. Another 5 reais for Papa's medication. That's nearly half my monthly expenses." Lucia stared at the receipts as if they were accusing her. Every doctor visit, every pill, every test had become a source of conflict. They were no longer seen as parents by their children, but as burdens, responsibilities no one wanted to shoulder. "Sylvia, darling, the doctor said your father needs those medications to keep his heart stable," Lucia explained. Sylvia replied sharply, her voice dripping with bitterness, asking what she really needed. To pay her own bills instead of supporting 2 people who contribute nothing to the household. Each word from Sylvia felt like sharp glass piercing Lucia's heart. No contribution. Was this truly how her daughter saw her now? The woman who raised 3 children, hand-stitched their clothing, cooked daily meals, stayed awake through fevers and tears, and scrubbed laundry through the hardest times, now reduced to just another useless mouth to feed. Ricardo entered the kitchen, slightly dizzy from his blood pressure medication, pillow marks still visible on his cheek. His eyes showed clearly that he had heard everything. "Good morning, daughter," he greeted Sylvia, forcing a smile as he always did, trying to maintain peace even as their world crumbled. Sylvia didn't respond. She simply grabbed bread, spread a thin layer of margarine, and left while chewing aggressively, each bite seeming like a protest against her parents' very existence. Lucia handed Ricardo a cup of coffee, her hands trembling so badly that drops spilled into the saucer. They sat at the table eating in silence, both drowning in their own thoughts. "She didn't mean what she said," Ricardo whispered weakly, though doubt filled his voice. "She meant it, my love. And she's right," Lucia replied, staring at her plate. "We're just burdens to them now." The silence was broken by the door opening. Sergio had just returned from his night shift at the factory, his uniform covered in grease, exhaustion written across his face. He entered the kitchen, looked at his parents, and sighed deeply as if preparing for another difficult conversation. "We need to talk," he said coldly and formally. Nothing like the young Sergio whom Lucia used to comfort during nightmares. "Of course, son. What is it?" Ricardo asked weakly. Sergio sat down and rubbed his temples. This can't continue like this. Sylvia is right. The cost of your medication is too heavy. We're drowning. Lucia's heart sank. Even Sergio, who used to be calm and forgiving, was now against them. Maybe we can speak with the doctor, Ricardo suggested gently. Find cheaper medication. It's not just the medicine, Sergio stated firmly. Everything: food, electricity, water. This house can't support 5 elderly people living here. 5 elderly people. Those words echoed in Lucia's mind. When did they stop being called Mama and Papa and become just 2 more old people taking up space? We've been discussing a solution, Sergio continued, avoiding eye contact with his parents. This might be better for everyone. What kind of solution? Lucia asked, her chest tight with anxiety. There's a place, a home for the elderly. Nice, clean, quiet, with proper medical care. You'd have people your own age to talk to. You want to send us to a care facility? Ricardo asked, his voice barely audible. It's not like that, Sergio replied. It's just an opportunity for you to live more comfortably, without all this tension. Tears filled Lucia's eyes. Sergio, your father built this house with his own hands. Every wall, every brick carries our family's story. Please don't make this worse. You know the situation is already extremely difficult. At that moment, Matteo appeared in the doorway, still in his pajamas, despite it being nearly noon. At 32 years old, he still lived with his parents like a guest in his own home, only knowing how to complain. Are you talking about sending them away? He asked while yawning and stretching. Finally, I couldn't sleep last night because of Papa's coughing, and Mama kept getting up to use the bathroom. It's exhausting. Sergio tried to respond but clearly lacked conviction. It's not really a care facility, whatever you call it. It's the same thing, Matteo interrupted. What matters is that this gets done. My girlfriend won't even visit anymore. She says it's uncomfortable having them always around. Lucia felt like she'd been punched in the chest. Unwanted. Their very presence had become irritating to others. Ricardo slowly stood up, each movement accompanied by pain. I'll just step outside for a moment, he said quietly. Lucia knew what that meant. He needed to get away briefly, to release the weight of his emotions far from the hurtful words of their children. He always did that, hiding his pain so others wouldn't feel it. The hidden yellow envelope in Ricardo's old wallet, tucked behind faded photographs of their children from happier times, had been there for weeks. Lucia had placed it away thinking it was just advertising, never giving it another thought. But fate works in its own way, and sometimes justice arrives when least expected from places you'd never imagine. Note both parts maintain the original emotional weight, narrative flow, conversational tone, and approximate word count while using fresh, natural language suitable for professional voiceover work. The rewrite preserves all key plot points, character dynamics, and the foreshadowing of the hidden inheritance that will later bring consequences to the ungrateful children. Never returned again. Ricardo spoke softly, pushing away his bowl of porridge. I can't stay here anymore. I know, my love, she answered weakly. I feel it too. If we leave this place, where will we go? Lucia asked. Our children don't want us, and the house is no longer ours. Ricardo remained silent for several moments, staring at the table. Then he lifted his head, and Lucia saw a spark of strength she hadn't witnessed in weeks. Lucia, Ricardo said quietly, if we're going to die anyway, it's better to do it outside, breathing real air, not here drowning in the smell of decay. Lucia felt a tremor run through her. Not fear, but something rekindling inside her chest. Are you certain? I'm certain, he answered firmly. We can leave whenever we want. We're not prisoners. But Ricardo, where would we go? Anywhere, he replied. As far as our feet can carry us, just far from here, to a place where we can die with dignity. 3 days passed. In the early morning darkness, Lucia lay staring at the cracked ceiling of the dormitory. She couldn't sleep. Beside her, Ricardo was also awake, his breathing uneven. For several nights they'd been whispering like fugitives, planning every detail of their escape. As usual around 5 in the morning, the night nurse had dozed off at the reception desk. This was the moment they'd been waiting for. Now, Ricardo whispered. They moved slowly, their joints stiff, every movement deliberate. Lucia grabbed the plastic bag containing their few belongings. Ricardo put on his thin, worn jacket, their only protection against the cold. They walked silently through the hallway that reeked of salt, stale air, and sadness. As they passed the front desk, the nurse snored peacefully, her head resting against the chair back. The door ahead was locked, but Ricardo had long observed how it was opened each morning. Carefully, he turned the key, wincing at the soft screech of metal. When the door finally opened, the cold dawn air greeted them like a blessing from heaven. Lucia grasped Ricardo's hand tightly, afraid that if she let go, he might vanish completely. "Where are we going?" she asked softly, her voice trembling. "Far away," Ricardo answered simply. "As far as our legs will take us." They walked along the cracked sidewalk, two small, fragile shadows beneath the yellow glow of streetlights, carrying their entire lives in an old plastic bag. After 6 hours, they reached the edge of the highway. The sun was high now, scorching their skin, and Lucia's legs trembled with exhaustion. But she refused to stop because stopping meant surrender, and she wasn't ready to give up yet. Every few steps, Ricardo clutched his chest, gasping for breath. His heart screamed for rest, but he forced himself to continue, not wanting to worry Lucia. "Let's rest for a moment," Lucia said when she noticed how pale he'd become. They sat on the dry grass beside the road. Vehicles passed by, filled with people hurrying home to families and households that still wanted to see them. "Lucia," he said weakly, barely audible, "do you regret that we left?" "Never," Lucia answered firmly, tightening her grip on his hand. "I'd rather die free than live another day in that place." A truck roared past, honking loudly, covering them in dust. Lucia wiped her eyes, and when she looked at Ricardo again, she saw he was struggling to breathe. His skin felt cold despite the blazing sun. "My love, are you all right?" "Just tired," he replied, forcing a smile. But Lucia saw the truth, the cold sweat, the shaking hands, the silence accompanied by pain. They continued walking, each step heavier than the last. The road ahead seemed endless, and Lucia began questioning whether their decision was wrong. But when she turned and saw the city gradually disappearing behind them, she knew she'd rather be lost with Ricardo than imprisoned again in a place of forgotten souls. Part 20 rewritten continuation. At high noon under the blazing sun, Ricardo stopped in the middle of the road. "Lucia, I can't go on," he said, his legs trembling, his skin deathly pale. The sun felt like it was burning them alive, the heat penetrating to their bones. They had no food, no water, no destination, only the silent emptiness surrounding them. "Just a little further, Ricardo," Lucia pleaded. "Surely there's somewhere we can rest." But even she knew it was a lie. There was nothing ahead of them, just broken concrete, dry grass, and emptiness. Two souls abandoned, walking with no destination, forsaken by those who should have loved them. Ricardo leaned against Lucia, the full weight of his 78 years of life pressing on her fragile body. Lucia's knees nearly buckled, but she forced herself to stay strong. He needed her. "Lucia, I think I'm going to faint." "No, my love, don't. Please, hold on," she begged. But she could feel Ricardo slipping away, the weight of his body, his colorless lips, his weakening heart. "Lucia, I love you. I love you too. I've always loved you." Right there in the middle of that deserted road, they embraced while the sun burned their bodies. Lucia knew this might be their final moment. She looked up at the vast, clouded sky. "Lord, if you have any mercy left, please send us help. Please." In the silence, a faint rumble gradually echoed. She turned and saw an old vehicle approaching, a white hatchback, faded and scratched. It slowly stopped beside them. Lucia waved with all her strength like someone rescued from the sea. The car halted, and a man in his 30s stepped out. His clothes were simple, clearly tired from work, but his face was kind. The type of kindness that expects nothing in return. "My God, what are you two doing out here alone?" He rushed over, immediately noticing Ricardo's condition. "Please," Lucia cried, her voice breaking. "His heart. He needs help." Without hesitation, the man said, "Come. I'll take you to the hospital right now." He helped Ricardo into the back seat, then opened the door for Lucia, who climbed in while still gripping her husband's hand tightly. The man quietly circled the vehicle and rushed back toward the nearest town, constantly checking the rearview mirror to make sure Ricardo was still conscious. "How did you end up here?" he asked. Lucia didn't know how to explain that their own children had abandoned them, that they'd escaped from a place that should have provided care, but felt more like a prison. "It's a long story," she answered weakly. "You don't have to explain now," he said gently. "What matters is getting him help." Lucia looked at this stranger who showed more compassion in one moment than her own children had in months. Tears streamed down her weathered cheeks, not just from exhaustion or fear, but from gratitude that humanity still existed somewhere in this cruel world. As the car sped toward salvation, she held Ricardo's hand and whispered prayers of thanks to the stranger, who appeared when they needed mercy most. The man responded gently, "What's important right now is helping you both." Lucia observed him as he drove, his hands roughened by labor, his shirt old but clean. In his eyes, she recognized a kindness she'd almost forgotten existed in the world. "What's your name, son?" Lucia asked. "Daniel," he answered. "And you?" "I'm Lucia, and this is my husband Ricardo. Pleased to meet you both." He smiled warmly. "Don't worry anymore, you're safe now." Somehow, inexplicably, Lucia believed him. For the first time in ages, she felt that perhaps life hadn't completely given up on them. Inside Ricardo's worn wallet, the yellow envelope remained hidden among crumpled papers, carrying a secret that would change everything. But in that moment, the only treasure that mattered was a stranger's kindness. Sometimes angels arrive in dusty old vehicles. 1 week passed in the hospital room. Ricardo slowly opened his eyes, blinking against the bright white ceiling. He felt momentarily confused about his whereabouts. The sharp smell of disinfectant made his stomach turn. His first thought was whether they'd returned him to that dreadful care facility. But when he turned his head, he saw Lucia beside him, gripping his hand tightly, her eyes swollen from crying. "You came back to me," she whispered. "Lucia, how long have I been here?" "A full week." "My love," she answered softly. "You suffered a severe heart attack. The doctors said it was extremely close." Ricardo tried remembering everything. The road, the brutal heat, the moment he thought it would all end there. Then the stranger, a young man with kind eyes who stopped when no one else would. "Where's the man who helped us?" he asked. "Daniel." Lucia smiled faintly. "He's still here. He hasn't left even one night. He's been sleeping in the hallway." Ricardo's eyes filled with tears. A complete stranger had shown them love their own children never gave. The door opened quietly. Daniel entered carrying a cup of hot coffee and smiled when he saw Ricardo awake. "Mr. Ricardo, thank God." He set the cup down and approached. "How are you feeling?" "Still alive," Ricardo said weakly. "By God's grace." Daniel smiled shyly. "Don't thank me. I only did what anyone should do." Lucia and Ricardo exchanged glances. "No," Lucia said softly. "Not everyone would do that." They knew this was true because their own children hadn't. "Daniel," Lucia asked, her voice slightly trembling, "why did you help us?" The young man seemed somewhat embarrassed. "Because, Dodo Lucia, you reminded me of my grandparents. They passed when I was young. I promised myself that if I ever encountered elderly people in need, I'd help them. Hoping someone did the same for them back then." He couldn't finish the sentence, overcome with emotion. Ricardo extended his hand, and Daniel gently held it like something sacred. "Son, how can we ever repay what you've done?" "You owe me nothing," Daniel answered quietly. "Sometimes people help each other simply because it's right." 3 days later, Ricardo was ready for discharge. Dr. La Vega, an older physician with kind but tired eyes, handed Lucia the discharge papers. His tone was serious. "Due to Lucia, your husband's heart is very weak. He can't withstand any intense emotion or heavy work." Lucia nodded, though her chest felt heavy. "Doctor," she said softly, "we have nowhere to go." The doctor hesitated before speaking in a low voice. "Does your family know you're here?" "They stopped caring long ago," Lucia answered bitterly. Dr. La Vega sighed deeply. He'd seen this situation repeatedly. Parents abandoned like useless old tools. "Listen to me," he said calmly. "I shouldn't be saying this, but there's a social worker here who knows a family. They take in elderly couples with nowhere else to turn. They're honest people with good hearts." Lucia blinked in disbelief. "There are still people like that." "There are," the doctor replied, smiling slightly. "And you've already met one of them." He gestured toward the hallway where Lucia saw Daniel speaking with a golden-haired woman. She watched him explaining something, while the woman listened attentively. "Who is she?" Lucia asked. "That's Sophia, his wife," the doctor answered. "He called her yesterday. But it's better if he tells you himself." An hour later, Lucia saw Daniel approaching with the woman. Due to Lucia, Daniel greeted warmly. "This is my wife, Sophia." Sophia approached and immediately embraced Lucia like a longtime friend. "Lucia," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "Daniel told me everything. How your children treated you. How you escaped from that place." Lucia couldn't speak. Sophia's anger and compassion felt genuine, as if their suffering was her own parents' pain. "Recently," Daniel began, holding his wife's hand, "Sophia and I talked extensively, and we have an important question for you." Lucia's heart raced. Would they offer money or perhaps a job? She hoped this wasn't charity. She didn't want to feel pitied. "What kind of offer is this?" she asked hesitantly. Sophia knelt to meet her gaze, her expression sincere. "Lucia, Daniel and I have been married for 7 years without children. We've always imagined a home filled with love, with grandparents, cousins, aunts and uncles sharing stories. And the day we met you on that road," Daniel continued, his voice warm like destiny itself, "it felt like the parents we never knew suddenly appeared before us." Tears streamed down Lucia's face. "I don't understand what you mean." "We want you to live with us," Sophia said directly. "Become part of our family. Become the parents we've been searching for. But you barely know us. We know what matters." Daniel responded gently. "We know your family didn't treat you with kindness, and we see the goodness in your hearts." Lucia couldn't hold back her tears. After all the sorrow, rejection, and pain, she couldn't believe such an opportunity existed. This wasn't pity. This was home, a true home built on love. "But what if we become burdens?" she asked weakly. "What if we get sick or something happens?" "Lucia," Sophia said softly, stroking her hands, "love doesn't count costs. When you truly care, caregiving is never a burden. It's a joy." 2 weeks passed. When Lucia opened her eyes, she found herself in a peaceful, well-arranged room in Daniel and Sophia's house. The couple had specially prepared this room for her and Ricardo. Morning light filtered through flowered curtains, and she heard her husband's gentle breathing beside her. This was the first time in months she'd slept peacefully. In the kitchen, she heard Sophia singing softly while preparing breakfast. When Sophia saw her, she immediately smiled with pure happiness. "Good morning, Mama Lucia." Mama Lucia. Those words were so sweet they nearly stopped her heart. "Good morning, daughter. Did you sleep well? How's Papa Ricardo?" Lucia smiled at that name. When Ricardo first heard it, he cried like a child. "He's still resting. The doctor said he needs time to regain strength. Let him rest as long as he wants. This is your home now." Daniel entered the kitchen dressed for work. He kissed Lucia on the cheek as he did every morning, and asked with a smile, What's our menu today, Ma? I thought I'd cook that grilled chicken you enjoyed yesterday, Lucia replied. Perfect. But if you're tired, Sophia can cook. Oh no. Son, cooking for you both is one of my greatest pleasures. And it was true. After years of being made to feel unwanted in her own kitchen, Lucia rediscovered joy cooking for people who genuinely appreciated it, praising every dish and asking for seconds. After Daniel left, Sophia sat at the table, her tone serious. Lucia, there's something you need to know. Lucia looked at her, suddenly anxious. What is it? Yesterday, while you were resting, a postal carrier came. He said he'd been searching for someone named Ricardo Herrera for a long time. Lucia's expression changed. That's my husband's full name. I know, Sophia answered, handing her a thick envelope from atop the refrigerator. He left this, saying it's important. Lucia took the envelope with trembling hands. It was thick, official, looking, with a law firm seal. What could this be? She whispered. I don't know, Mama, Sophia replied. But maybe we should wake Papa Ricardo so you can open it together. 3 minutes later, all four gathered in the living room. Ricardo sat on the sofa still in pajamas, holding the envelope like it might explode at any moment. Lucia sat beside him while Sophia and Daniel sat across from them, both tense. Go ahead, Ricardo, Lucia said softly. Whatever it is, we'll face it together. Carefully and slowly, Ricardo opened the envelope. Inside were several documents with seals, signatures, and legal language difficult to understand. As he read, his expression gradually changed, the color draining from his face. Lucia, he whispered. This can't be real. What is it? What does it say? He didn't answer immediately, continuing to read, shaking his head repeatedly as if